Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, either be fired or accept a massive pay cut. Okay, I'll take the firing. Camera must be on. You want me to patrol each park? Fine by me. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Either be fired or accept a massive pay cut. Okay, I'll take the firing. I worked for a company for 14 years. I loved working there for 12 of those years. There were two main parts to the job. The first part was the sales side of things. This was away from the office, in the customer's location. This involved quite a bit of driving and on a couple of occasions flying abroad to work face to face with the customers to deliver a high quality product. We weren't the cheapest, but we were the superior product. And I was the best employee when it came to delivering the product. I consistently got rave reviews from customers for my personal style when it came to delivering the product and executing the customer's vision. I got a huge amount of repeat business and I got a lot of new business through word of mouth with customers recommending the company based on their experiences with me. The second part was the office side. This was my weaker side. I hated cold calling potential customers with numbers I found in the phone book. When it came to answering the phone and speaking to potential customers who initiated contact with us, I was fine. But I wasn't great at making the calls. This was my only real not great part of my job. So, in the office, I wasn't asked to make any calls. Instead, I prepared product, designed new product, trained new staff members, ended up being one of the biggest parts of my job. I was also the problem solver, helping out whenever and wherever, filling in for sick employees whenever I could. I liked the owner and I liked the manager. I liked all the staff who were around me. All in all, it was a great job that I was really good at and took pride in. The company had been doing so well that the owner had slowly expanded over the 12 years since I started working for company. I had joined about 3 months after he started, so I'd been a part of this expansion. I worked out of my nearest office, but often traveled to other areas to train their staff. I was loaned out, as it were, to other companies to help train their staff. At one point, I was a guest lecturer at a university teaching medical students how to deliver complicated explanations to people who don't have the base knowledge that you yourself do. After 12 years, I was on a decent salary. Not massive, but I was happy. Then the owner decided to sell off part of the company. He was selling the area where my local office was. He told me he would love for me to remain as his employee, but I would need to work from a different office. This was either require me to move or to quadruple, at a minimum, my daily commute. The other option was to remain working from my current office but with a new boss? I chose the second option. Before the new owner bought the company, she worked alongside the staff for a couple of weeks to see how we operated. This was before any of us knew she was about to buy the company. As far as we knew, she was just another employee, and she was shadowing us to learn. She came with me on assignments in the field and saw my abilities. When the sale was announced and we were informed that she was the new owner, everyone was very surprised. She made some sweeping staffing changes. The manager left to start her own business, since the new owner was also going to be the manager. A lot of staff were let go. The secretary, myself, and a couple of newer hires were kept on. The new hires were on the lowest wages, not salaries. Anyone who had got to a decent level was let go. Since almost everyone was on a 0-hours contract, she was able to do this. Whilst technically it was a new company for the customers, it was the same old business. The company still had the same trading name. The only real difference was that there was a new owner and the registered business name was now different. As far as the customers were concerned, nothing had changed. My job for the first few months after the sale was to train up the remaining staff to replace the more experienced staff members who had been let go. I recommended a couple of new hires who I had experience working with in the past. I was open and honest with the owner, and let her know that one of them was a close friend and one of them was my girlfriend. Both were more than qualified for the work and both were happy to join. My friend had recently come back to the country after a year of traveling, whilst my girlfriend could only work during school holidays, worked in a school. The owner gave them both interviews, then hired them, since we needed the staff. Over the next 2 years, business started to fall. The reason was simple: the new owner decided to try and maximize profits by increasing prices whilst decreasing the quality of the product. For new customers, this wasn't noticeable. They just thought we were expensive and the product wasn't the best. But for old customers who had been with us for 10+ years, they immediately noticed. They were being charged more and were receiving less/worse quality. So the owner doubled down and increased prices again. 95% of our old customers left us. New customers almost never became repeat customers. Complaints skyrocketed. Whilst all this was going on, our staff turnover rate was ridiculous. People left after a few months when they realized that the minimum wage they were being paid wasn't worth it. Under the old owner, the average hourly wage for new employees was around 2.5x the minimum wage. This made people care about their jobs and want to keep them. My girlfriend quit. My friend remained, but was looking for something new. Then I got a phone call. The owner needed me to come to the office. This was unexpected. I had just finished working on location with a customer. My next customer was in 2.5 hours. It was a half-hour drive away. The office was about an hour and 10 minutes away from both locations. If I drove back to the office, I would have about 5 minutes in the office before leaving. My mileage was paid above my regular salary, so I was saving the company money by doing this. Also, parking was a nightmare around the second location, so I intended to get there as early as possible to find parking, then read a book. The manager didn't care. She needed me to return to the office. So I did. I arrived back to be handed a letter by the owner. It was informing me of a disciplinary meeting to take place in a couple of days' time. I could bring a witness along if I so desired. This knocked me for 6. I was the best employee. I read through her list of complaints about my performance and started working on my defense. At the meeting, I declined to have a witness. Instead, I decided to record the audio of the entire meeting on my phone without informing her. Where I live, this is legal and I didn't need consent. The boss witness was her friend who she had met at yoga and hired for an office role, firing the secretary who had been there long before the takeover. Every point she raised I could counter. They ranged from the weak You were unavailable to work for a week in August. I booked a week's holiday so I could attend my cousin's wedding on the other side of the country and turn it into a holiday. To the pathetic. You were late for work on the 12th of May. Is that the day my car broke down and I called the office to let you know? I don't know. I do. Here's the receipt from the garage dated May 12th. To the downright lies. This one I can't write as a quote. Basically, she accused me of gross misconduct for breaking health and safety laws in the way I was delivering a product for a customer. I hadn't broken health and safety laws. I knew exactly what I was doing since, as I've mentioned already, I had been doing this for 14 years at this point. She had witnessed me do this on multiple occasions and had never mentioned it before. Because it wasn't an issue. She even had me train staff in this specific delivery method. Because it wasn't an issue. She finished her list by telling me that she doesn't want to lose me, but she can't justify keeping such a poor employee at my current salary. I had two choices. I could either sign a 0-hours contract and work for minimum wage, or she could fire me with 2 weeks' notice. I countered that she would have to give me 12 weeks' notice, since my contract guaranteed me 1 week's notice for every year of employment, up to a maximum of 12. She argued that I had only been her employee for 2 years, since before then I worked for the previous owner. I informed her that with how the business takeover had run, it counts as continuous employment. I quoted the exact law and code that backed me up. She asked for a 30-minute break in the meeting to let me think about her offer. She went to call her lawyer. When she came back, she informed me that since she was firing me for gross misconduct, she didn't have to give me any notice at all. If I wanted to remain and move to the 0-hours contract, I could do that today. But if I didn't, then she would have to fire me. But because she was nice, she would give me the 2 weeks' notice. I asked for a couple of hours to go home and think about this. She allowed this. I knew the reason she wanted me to remain for at least the 2 weeks was because one of our few remaining bigger customers were set to have a product delivery from me in that time. They would only work with me. The owner had tried sending other staff in my place in several occasions, and each time there had been problems. It wasn't the staff's fault. It was just a very difficult delivery for a very specific customer which needed to be perfect. As a result, this customer would only deal with me. I called the office and spoke to the owner. I declined the offer of a 0-hours contract and said I would be leaving. She then said she was giving me my 2 weeks' notice. I declined her offer of 2 weeks' notice. I informed her that if I was being fired for gross misconduct, then surely I cannot be relied upon to safely deliver the product. Therefore, it would be best for everyone involved if I didn't return to work. She panicked and said that she needed me for those 2 weeks. I feigned ignorance and let her know that I was just thinking about what's best for the company. After all, you can't have unsafe staff delivering your product to your customers. However, if she wanted to rethink the gross misconduct accusation, then I would work my 12 weeks' notice. They were her options. 0 weeks or 12. She chose 12. For those 12 weeks, I worked the same way I had for 14 years. I didn't coast. I didn't slack. I didn't badmouth the company on my way out. I continued to train new staff. I continued to deliver the product in my own, personal, exceptional way. I also got in touch with a lawyer who was a specialist in employment law. For those 12 weeks, the owner barely spoke to me. She resented the fact that I knew my legal rights and didn't just believe her lies. She hated the fact that I could defend myself. She was petty. She accidentally dropped my mug in the kitchen, breaking it. Most petty of all, she paid for every member of staff in the office to have a spa day, except me. I was asked to work my day off to answer the phones whilst everyone else was being pampered. Nobody knew I hadn't been invited until they arrived at the spa and I wasn't there. Here's the thing, I'm a big fat bearded guy. I have no interest in a spa day. If she had offered it to me, I would have thanked her and declined the kind offer. But by pointedly excluding me, she was making herself look terrible. For the last 2 weeks, I was training up my friend to basically take over from me. At the end of the 12 weeks, my final day came around. The owner had nothing planned. Not so much as a card after 14 years, too, for her. The office assistant manager who had become a friend had got me some presents, but had to give them to me once the boss was gone, for fear of reprisals. The day after my final day, 2 things happened. The first was my friend who I had been training up to replace me quit. He was on a 0-hours contract, so required no notice. He was unhappy with her treatment of me, and was unhappy that she expected him to do my, previously salaried, job for minimum wage. He hadn't informed me of his plans to leave, and I only learned of it when he knocked on my door in the middle of the day when he should have been at work to let me know. The second was the owner received a letter informing her that I was bringing legal proceedings against her for constructive dismissal, unfair dismissal. I had arranged this with my lawyer to be delivered the day after my final day. According to the office assistant, she went pale and started crying before leaving the office to call her lawyer. She refuted my claims for constructive unfair dismissal. Said it was gross misconduct. Tried to come up with some more reasons for firing me. But the truth was that the company was making less money because of her business practices, and I was the highest and only salary. I had evidence that I was a great employee. I had evidence that she asked me to move to a 0-hours contract. She initially tried to deny this, since the gross misconduct fabrication makes no sense if she wanted me to stay. But once my lawyer provided hers with a transcript of the entire meeting along with a copy of the recording, she knew she was F***ed. Still, she let the case drag on for over a year. I think she hoped that the legal fees would lead to me dropping the case. Little did she know my lawyer was working on a no-win no-fee basis, whilst hers wasn't. She ended up settling out of court. The aftermath. The office assistant who had become a friend quit a couple of months after I left. She hated how I was treated and didn't feel safe working for such an untrustworthy boss. Several former customers contacted me personally to inquire why I was no longer with the company. Apparently, the owner was telling them that I just quit. I informed them that I had been fired for cost-cutting reasons. They moved their business elsewhere. Several offered me jobs. One went so far as to offer me a part-time job and to pay for me to attend college to earn a degree required for them to hire me full-time. This was a lovely offer, but they were one of the customers who were a bit too far away to commute, and I wasn't ready to move. In the end, I found a new job in a different industry where a lot of my skills transferred over. Currently earning more than I was, working less hours, and for better owners. The business is floundering. COVID left the new owner desperate for cash. She canceled orders but refused to refund customers' money, citing an act of God clause in the contracts. The business Facebook and Google reviews have tanked. Most staff left. The business is still afloat, but barely. A hard-working employee with good work ethics is worth their weight in gold. Happy employee equals better work. Not sure why a lot of upper management doesn't seem to understand this simple formula. Good for you. Seems like people got what they deserved. As Buck Strickland says, don't kill the golden goose. That felt like a slow burn revenge, and I love it. Revenge casserole is one of the more delicious dishes, after all. It's like an old-time fuse, you wait for it to reach its destination, then kaboom. This was worth the read. Lovely job of letting the natural consequences of her actions playing out while protecting yourself. Also, I'm totally curious what the industry was. Initially was thinking medical or healthcare, but by the end was thinking some kind of chemical or oil field type thing. You write like more of an engineer than a humanities major. He did say he gave a lecture to medical students about how to explain their technical language to the average person, so I assume medical. But let's not try to out-op since he was trying to hide his identity for legal reasons. Sounds like medical equipment industry. Almost entirely made up of engineers or engineering techs, with maybe MBAs as owners/managers. A very pleasant read, in the end. The arrogance and ignorance of someone thinking their best employee can be replaced at minimum wage. Agree with others' comments, very satisfying and detailed. Not sure why private sector people think they literally own their employees and can mess about with them at will like a cat toying with a mouse. There are more sociopaths floating around than people think. It's great that many of them aren't as smart as they think they are, and we end up with stories like this. She canceled orders but refused to refund customers' money, citing an act of God clause in the contracts. That can justify a delay, but I don't see how any court will let her cancel the order entirely and keep the money. I worked at a museum that people rented for weddings, and when everything shut down last March, I got the fun job of calling all the April weddings to tell them that they were canceled. My boss didn't want to give them a refund because in our contracts, weddings canceled less than a month before the date were non-refundable. She didn't seem to understand that that didn't apply if we were the ones canceling the wedding. Many court cases are still waiting to be heard because of COVID. Many businesses can't afford to go after things like that because of COVID. I'm going to take over a business that's running well, and then I'm going to tweak it to death, such that it becomes unviable. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Right. Because you know so much more than they do. It's too bad that you had to go through this, but you handled it very well. I'm glad that you're in a good space now. Right. Why does someone buy a thriving business and then change stuff? These always play out the same way. And nobody ever learns. A good story well told. Kudos to you for knowing your worth and your rights and for protecting both. Camera must be on. So I, 26F, am a new mom and just returned to work from mat leave June 1st. I work from home in a telemarketing position via chat/text selling Windows. This is important. In this time I have attended multiple virtual Teams meetings that should have been emails, attended team huddles, met with coworkers one-on-one and revised some of our best practices, all while holding my at the time 2-month-old son. 3 weeks ago we were informed that turning our cameras on for virtual meetings was mandatory, and she did not care if we were put together or presented as professional for these meetings, but the expectation was to have your camera on and engage in topics discussed. She also informed me that being a parent was unprofessional. Not important to this story. So after running my plan by my coworkers, team of 10, and getting a green light. In the last 2 weeks I have attended 21 meetings. In every meeting I log into the meeting, turn on my camera and I sit out of frame of the camera on my laptop, on my office floor or to the side so I can see but not be seen, so all you see is the empty chair I'm supposed to be sitting in. But I don't move until she says, so let's get started. So between my logging in and her let's get started, I wear my I'm pissed at the planet face. I also participate/engage in these meetings and derail them, so they end up lasting much longer than she intended, and she just ends up spinning wheels with my amount of engagement, questions, interjections, corrections, and an overall obnoxious level of engagement. I have done this for every meeting in the last 2 weeks. I have a routine meeting with supervisor on Friday and will also be out of frame during the meeting. I will continue to do so until she no longer makes us have our cameras on. Your demand, cameras on. I listened. Not once did she say we had to be seen on said cameras. You should breastfeed on camera. That'll end that. This is honestly where I thought we were going with this story. I liked the one where OP joined a meeting from a hospital bed while undergoing cancer treatment. The teacher who demanded she turn her camera on lost her job. I just found that the camera on my laptop doesn't like bright light, so I angled the camera so that it's pointing towards one of the very bright ceiling lights. All that can be seen of me is a fuzzy dark outline. My last meeting, I spent an enjoyable 45 minutes reading a book and nobody knew, smiley face. Cameras can pick up infrared. Buy an infrared lamp that you can't see, but it'll overexpose the camera like crazy and they won't be able to see anything. I want to introduce you to a program called OBS Studio. It has a function called virtual camera and you can literally put anything on it. I put a video of me sitting in front of a camera and put it on a loop and then do my work. You can actually show a video of another coworker. They never said it has to be you showing up. Even better, have the working loop video running and walk by in the background every so often. Get a colored screen for behind you. Wear the same color as a t-shirt and dye your hair that color too, then use the background filter to make yourself appear as a bald floating head in all the video calls. Get a Gene Simmons mask and wear it on the calls. Act professionally whilst you are doing this so you cannot be called out. She said she didn't care what you look like after all. It's never too early for your kid's first Lego set. Build a contraption to hook over the top of your screen with a perch for a Lego you to sit on. If it's at the correct distance from the camera, it looks like a life-sized Lego person at your desk. Works like a charm. Did this in the early days of the pandemic. My team loved it. 10 out of 10 highly recommend. The possible outcome of your malicious compliance is that your manager might demand that everyone has to come to the office to avoid the nuisance that you are creating out of spite. I would be extremely pissed if my coworkers' behavior would result in me having to go to the office every day. You might feel triumphant by your actions now, but be careful they don't bite you in the ass. This is where I am. IWFH. I detest when coworkers will not turn on a camera when they've been instructed to. It is not hard to do. No one cares what you look like. It is easier to run a meeting when everyone can see visual cues of when someone is finished talking. All you are doing is giving corporate a reason to bring everyone back into the office. It would not be OP's behavior that changed anything, it would be the shitty control freak of a manager. Yeah, it's kind of annoying, but purposefully derailing meetings and being obnoxious sounds like a terrible idea that can get you fired. Requiring webcams to be in is a more terrible idea. In 11 years at my company, it's been on 3 times. One was for an interview, one was accidental. Nobody needs to see my face or office. I would be livid if one of my coworkers was purposely dragging on meetings just to be petty. Yeah, I rage against my company quite a bit, but usually draw the line at inconveniencing my coworkers who aren't in any better of a situation than I am. You want me to patrol each park? Fine by me. This come from back when I was working security in a local hospital. The hospital itself was made up of main building A/minors and wards, estates office, old ambulance station, the maternity ward and a management house which would house all of the upper management while they worked. Around the building were car parks. We had 9 in total, ranging from large to only a couple of spaces, but still a wide area. It would take around 30-40 minutes to check all the car parks, and take 10 to 15 minutes to get to one side of the site edge to the other. Our security office was located just outside of a/E, as believe it or not, but that was where most of the trouble was, which called for security to be there. As a fairly small hospital, there was only maximum of 3 security on each 8-hour shift. Security management could help, but often didn't want to get involved. We were doing our normal patrols of once every 30 minutes to go around each of the wards, which kept us quite busy if nothing was happening that day on shift. One day a nurse complained to the security manager that we need to be more visible around the car parks to stop break-ins. We don't often patrol the car parks as it's park at your own risk, as the site was lacking funds for extra security. Our manager understood this, which is why it just stayed as it was, due to the security team needing to stay in the wards and a/E to protect staff and patients. 6 months go by and our manager leaves. He is replaced with a new manager which hears the same complaint as the first one and orders us to start patrolling each and every car park and ward on our rounds. Needless to say, we just agreed and said okay. Please note, I know this would not end well, but I complied with my new orders and every day without fail walked around all the car parks even if it was half or nearly empty. Fast forward another week or two and a /E radioed us to attend as a patient was threatening staff. However, security officers were on the back car park roughly 5 to 10 minutes away even when running. Please note that was another rule, we had to stay in twos as we were only MAPA trained and it need 2 minimum. By the time we got there, this patient had already hit out to staff causing injury but also decided to run around a /E department and other joining areas breaking glass windows and scaring others. We controlled the situation after getting there, but it was already too late. Thousands of pounds worth of damage caused and a couple with small injuries. Later on, our new manager asked why our response time was so slow. We just replied by saying we was taking care of the car parks like order to buy you. The day after, more signs went up saying park at your own risk and were never ordered to patrol half-empty car parks again. New manager only lasted about 4/5 months after this incident. Manglement strikes again. Manglement is a great word. Going to have to start using it. Get it into the dictionary. Sounds like the real problem here was the lack of funding. It's not unreasonable for staff to expect to be able to park in a place they're not going to get robbed, assaulted, or otherwise victimized. They shouldn't have to decide between that and having security inside. Totally agree with you on this point. The story is from a few years ago now, but while I was there on staff, we were crying out for new staff to even have 4/5 on staff so car parks and inside can be covered both at the same time. I don't think it's lack of funding, more to do with irresponsible spending by the hospital. As we once paid for crap metal to be removed from site, even though they would have done it for free as they get paid at the skipyard as well. We loved them, why were you late? I know, right? It's hardly worth a reply, as they are never happen with the answer. Security management could help, but often didn't want to get involved. Sound like security management needed to respond. I hope that was the cause of dismissal. Management in that department was always weak, all 5 years I was at the hospital working. Most took the approach of hands off but mangled with the general staff to make it seem like their presence was also there. Don't know what that manager does know, but I would like to think he had warnings for not helping more in many different incidents, including this one. I feel like a golf cart could have solved this problem. The hospital would cut the nurse's salary 14% just to pay for it. I would have loved a golf cart. Definitely would have the car parks done in no time at all. Ah yes, better crimes against staff/visitors in the parking lot than in the building. Someone really dropped the ball here. Agreed. Priority and severity should have been taken in consideration when making this choice. Case of new manglement fixing something that wasn't broken. Typical poor management decision. They basically have one of two choices to make. 1. They can use their brain, apply some basic critical thinking skills, logic and knowledge, and make an informed or as informed of a decision as possible. 2. Or they cannot use their brain at all, decide on whatever sounds good in their head or what someone else suggests, and make that choice. Now, which choice do they make more often than not? Working there for 5 years. The second option around 90% of the time. Pardon, but could you please provide some clarity with abbreviations? I was able to find that a /E is accident/emergency, but what is MAPA? I feel like we might work in the same trust. Crazy rules, and we miss you guys being as present on the other wards as you used to be back in the day. That would be wild. I hope the place is still as safe as what it used to be and not having even more problems with lower levels of security. I heard they even put security on band 3. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.